So, good evening, everyone. Indeed, it is February 3rd, and we got through Groundhog Day somehow. And here we are, and we are working with a blueprint of enlightenment, and we are talking about the questions and answers from page 131 up to page 142. So I'll just start off with a little bit of something that appears on page 131 that maybe has come up for some of us as questions. In the fourth paragraph, it's at the bottom of the first question, the first answer. He says, Dōgen Zenji taught us to entrust ourselves to our body functions as our true nature, not for our own sake, not for the sake of others, and not because of human desires, demands, and so on. In this way, he clearly indicated what is the crucial point. So that was very interesting to me because certainly I can very well recall my first Zen teacher saying, oh, we sit for the sake of other people. We do not sit for ourselves, we sit for others. And I clearly remember him saying such a thing, and I clearly remember other teachers saying such a thing, and I have probably said the same thing also. But the question is that we are already together, that we are already unified and are already one. So there isn't some sake of anyone to sit for, except for sitting itself, except for the great matter itself. And not because of anything we desire or the demands of any kind, but this question of, do we sit for ourselves? Do we sit for our own sake? Do we sit for the sake of others? We are already that connected, so we simply sit.
Eido-san, I paused very long over that sentence. I have to admit, and I read it, I must have read it 4 or 5 times because my understanding was also the way of the Bodhisattva is that we sit for others. And so that was I'm glad I stopped and slowed down around that and read it over and over. And what I wrote in the margin is, just because it is. And then honors this ? And so it's sort of the thing that I finally left with was sort of this idea that through Zazen, we honor that nature of just being, that just isness. And I guess that's the conclusion I came around the phrase is our true nature.
That is, I think that is a correct take on it, Karen, because we have the bodhisattva that it's for the sake of other people. It's we live for the sake of others, but we simply live, and others are included in that living. So we don't have to make it about something about that. It is beingness, being on the cushion, and simply being. So yes, quite a correct take, I would say.
And then I guess the follow-up to that is the sensibility I was left with was a lot of lightness and freedom around that, because instead of this heaviness around doing it for others, like another obligation, even in a good way,
right.
There was just a lot of openness and lightness, I guess, around that.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that we are unaware of suffering or unaware of, those on the cushion next to us who may be having a difficult time. Our own activity is the strength that somebody suffering next to us would draw from. We don't have to do anything about that. We don't have to make anything of that. So our presence on the cushion is already that. But this is a subtle matter, and you could say, well, what are we doing that for? If it's not for the sake of others, what is this all about? And I do think that he alluded to this same kind of thing earlier in the book. I forget where that was, but then he comes clearly out and states it. So it's a subtle matter, but an important one, I think. It is, as Karen says, quite liberating.
This is the kind of passage that's really been illuminated for me by, I ran out and picked up a copy of Jundo Roshi Koen's book, Zen Master's Dance, and it's been so helpful to have these, like, his kind of images of really participation in a flow that's beyond time and locality. Like I drink the tea and the tea drinks me. I sit on the earth and the earth sits on me. I compassion arises in me, and the whole universe experiences this compassion at the same time.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
He says so in section 4, in the previous section, okay, as well.
Oh, okay, right. I knew we had come across it before, but we hadn't elucidated it. We hadn't opened it up and really looked at it more closely. So when he says the need for selfless practice means that there is no self there sitting there thinking, I'm doing this for you, because there is no self to think that. So as selfless practice would not have the notion that I am burdened with your suffering, as it were, or that you're going to be okay because I'm sitting here, on behalf of you. So that gets erased if we even say selfless practice. So.
Well, I got stuck in that paragraph on Dōgen Zenji taught us to entrust ourselves to our body functions as our true nature. So I was thinking,
which paragraph are you on?
Yeah, that same paragraph that you read.
Oh, okay. I see where it is.
So the part about body functions as our true nature.
Oh, right. Yes.
So I was just kind of wondering about that. I wasn't sure I really understood that, because it seems like body functions as our true nature might have something to do with intuition or instinct. But it's not always clear to me what is intuition and what is, let's say, coming from fear or I don't know, maybe I'm not reading this right, but I wasn't sure what he meant by that exactly.
Well,
I thought that he was meaning the sense functions, just the sense functions of purely seeing.
Meaning the sense functions without the I, no identification with the sense functions. That's just so you're saying it's just another way of saying that.
That was how I took it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree, Cynthia, and I would agree, Joan, that he's simply meaning that when we allow the body, when we allow those functions of the skandhas, eye, ear, nose, mouth, tongue, taste, body, mind, when we just allow those to work without the overlay of I on them, then that is our true nature. And there's nothing to get hold of in there. So it isn't as though we can say, oh, that's who I am. I mean, we can't do that because it's selfless. So it feels as though there's nothing there when you operate that way. That is the true nature. The unobstructed operation of life, perhaps we could say. The unobstructed beingness because the I is not interfering with the function of living. Helpful? Was that helpful? Not? Yes. It's so difficult because it must be experienced with any one of the sense functions. We have to experience it without the I so that we know what that is. He's going to say that later in the question and answers, is because we are intelligent, we know the difference between this or that. And we have an experience of seeing without I, we're liberated because we don't have the burden of carrying I. Seeing can see.
But is it, Eido-san, also a physical thing?
Yeah, of course.
Because giving into that, seeing and hearing and.
Right. I mean, the body just operates, and it's quite liberating because one is not constrained by seeing or, all the things that appear when I is seeing: judgment, dislike. All of those things disappear, so that life is liberated, is unencumbered. Then. And we only have to see it with one of the senses so that we can see that with all of the senses then. And it is physically, to me, it is like the healing of the complete makeup of being and the healing of the body itself.
I really appreciate this conversation because I also homed in on this particular section and the phrase, not for the sake of others. When I first read that, I thought of our vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. I vow to free them. I said, well, wait a minute. And so what I'm hearing from you is, as with almost everything we read, there's nuance, there's subtlety, there's relative, and there's absolute interpretations of what we're reading. Sitting could be passive, or in the views of some, or it could be a very active engagement. I have always thought of our sitting as an active engagement with the world, with all beings. But still, there's still some tension here in trying to reconcile the concept of I vow to save or to free all beings.
Yeah. So
this is good.
This question of saving is always a difficult one, but I can't save anybody. I can only save myself by removing the I. I can only liberate myself by that action of totally living. And like Shakyamuni Buddha, when Buddha woke up and he saw the morning star, he said, I and the entire world are awakened together. And so it is the same kind of thing, that if we save ourselves, if we liberate ourselves, we liberate everyone.
Yes.
So this is the only way we can save anyone at all, and we can only save ourselves. So, but it feels like that. Oh my goodness, what kind of work do I have to do to save all the impossibility of that, and almost the impossibility of saving myself, never mind all sentient beings.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Karen, I really appreciate what you said in terms of it being liberating. It frees us because, my goodness, what an incredible burden to bear, this responsibility. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Larry, I was just thinking about vow, and I was thinking about the way in which when we actively live our vows, we are, I think, often ridding ourselves of the I. If I'm operating for your welfare in some way. I'm fetching the rakes for us when we're, raking leaves. Whatever the action is, there's a collective, and we're saving each other, I guess, in that moment.
Yeah. I mean, it isn't that we don't do kind acts. Of course we do, because we are not alone. So we do engage with the world entirely when we sit Zazen. We're facing out to the world. When we face the wall, we are actually facing out to the world. So fully engaged with the entire world, because it is by that allowance that the myriad things come forward. By that opening, the myriad things come forward. So.
Can we return to this entrusting ourselves to the sense functions?
Sure, of course.
So that has been really a pivotal softening in my practice to stop so much trying to accomplish, and the word entrusting, I think, has been very liberating for me. And so I have two questions. The first one is, when we entrust ourselves to the sense function, is that the way in Zazen that we entrust ourselves to the Dharma, that we on the top of 139, that we go along with the Dharma, that we soften, we open, we become easy participants in the flow of Buddha Dharma Sangha.
Yes.
And so here's my question and this is the one on 139. So he's asked a question on the top. The questioner says, there is the expression, go with the flow of the water. Is that what human life is after all? And Roshi says, this is one principle, but human beings have intelligence. It isn't good to only go along with the Dharma, to be swept away by it. So this is my question is, so if I am to entrust and drop ego into Dharma, to drop the ego and entrust into Dharma, then it seems I don't. So how can I not be swept away by it?
Well, you might be swept away on the cushion, and that's fine. And I think that he is perhaps guarding against those who would fixate on that. I'm only suggesting that by the very next sentence. It's enough to understand that the Dharma doesn't have a fixed nature. So we don't want to fixate on that and think that either we got something or that is a kind of mental track we're going to live on. It has to be, every moment is different. Every moment is letting go of everything. So maybe we sit Zazen and we make that initial entrustment, and then we let it go. And then we just sit, or we sit, sorry, the word just, and then we sit. So that entrustment has already taken place then, so we don't have to keep saying, oh, I entrust, I entrust, I entrust. It's done.
It's there.
So, and the problem is then we don't want to make Dharma an object.
Yeah, the ego sneaking back around and making a little game out of it.
Correct. It's remarkable what the mind and ego can do. It's so remarkable. So it's very tricky that we watch that and we notice if that's what's happening. But the initial entrustment, when we first come to the cushion, allowing ourselves to be the functions themselves, and then let go. Sit. Is that helpful, Bill?
I'll tell you after I work with it on the question for a while. Oh, no, yes, it's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, the potholes are just everywhere in this practice. It's not easy. I mean, it's simple, but it's not easy to avoid these getting stuck places where we would create an objective about something, or we make a concept out of something. So it's a constant practice to pay attention to what our mind is doing, and ultimately that is our practice to resolve the issue of ego and liberate ourselves from that the turmoil and the tyrant of it. But it's a tyrant that we each are against ourselves. So our practice is to look at that continually until it abates and it lets go, it resolves, it softens, as you say, so that we really, really do entrust, that entrustment becomes complete. So, and we have the true experience of seeing or hearing or whatever. So.
I was thinking of intelligence as one of our natural functions, and to entrust just your natural intelligence. He talks about earlier in the book about we have the ability to recognize, this is the role of thinking, and so intelligence is something to be trusted. It gets tricky because the ego wants to just, co-opt everything. But I mean, he says, let's see. Well, he says on page 130, and this is the first paragraph toward the bottom. He's talking about the senses and how they work, they function. We can see anything just as it is. It is the same with the ear. Regardless of whether it is a voice that we like or don't like, the ears are made to accept it indifferently. Yet you are able to think about the usage of what you receive. This is useful here, but not there, because it disturbs this or that, and so on. Because you can observe such points clearly, you are free in using them. And to me, that's just a wonderful way to look at intelligence, the function of intelligence, and honoring that.
Yeah, you are quite right. I'm glad you brought it up, because for many of us, the issue of intelligence is once again ego, to know a certain amount of things or to have read a certain amount of books or something like that. But intelligence is like the mind, or is like seeing. It is a operating function endlessly going on for all of us. So it is it is there. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So we can talk about a particular intelligence of the universe, let's say. We could talk about the intelligence of the earth, how the earth on its axis, revolves around the sun. And this is like a particular intelligence that the earth simply does what it does. And it doesn't have to think about anything, but that is a form of intelligent happening.
Mhm.
Or the sun is an intelligence. And so we can think about or examine intelligence in that way. That is that which is not about thinking. It's about a function, once again, that holds us in the complete harmonious operation of the body and its movement in life. So it's, or, intelligence may also function intuitively. Let's say you're walking along with somebody and somebody drops something and you catch it. That's intelligence. That's just in the immediate body's intelligent response to not let that glass hit the ground. So we see intelligence in operation all the time, and we don't think of it as such, but that is what its function is. So it's the intelligence also operates. We lie down, we go to sleep, we get up, we sit zazen. All of that is intelligent functioning. And then we try to leave it alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, anybody have anything else, or I'll bring up another area to move to if you're all right. So how about this question of loneliness? The questioner says, you've spoken about helpless feelings. Is it necessary to go through such helpless loneliness? And he says, yeah, of course. You wanted not to have loneliness in your life. It will arise when you think about the way and wonder what will happen to our lives if we follow the way. We feel that, and this is a very, very subtle kind of loneliness he's talking about at this moment. It's a sort of a drawing back and a musing over what it would be like if I allowed myself to become enlightened, or if I allowed myself to shave my head and go into a monastery, or something like that. What he expresses that as a kind of loneliness, just the thinking about what that would be. And this helplessness, if we feel that way, he says, you can't do true practice, because we're thinking about what it might be like, what something might be like. And we can't know that. We have to simply throw ourselves onto the path, onto the way of practice. But I just found it very subtle and interesting that it's expressed, that observation of what something would be like is expressed as loneliness.
Mm.
And I think he does that because in that moment we are separated from our true practice at that moment. Saying, what would that be like? I wonder if I should do that, and what that would be like if I go somewhere. So, So I had an exchange with Kondo Roshi at Ensuji. I was teaching at the university, and I was already thinking that I was going to go and I was going to quit teaching, and I was going to go into the monastery. But I decided that I would wait 1 year because I wanted to pay off all my debts. So Kondo Roshi, I don't think he knew that that was my purpose, But he said, you want to go into the monastery, you should do it right now. You should do it right now. And I said, no, I'm going to wait a year. I'm going to do it next year. He says, you just disappointed yourself. You shouldn't disappoint yourself in life. I mean, he's very straight down the line teacher, you know. So I think that there was that kind of point of loneliness then he maybe imagined I was feeling, because I was saying, well, I want to do it, but I'm not going to do it. And anything could have happened in that year that it could have made it impossible for me to go to do the training, to be ordained and do the training. So his point was, you should never put these things off. Too much, hesitate like that, it's wrong. I think this Roshi, that Gien Roshi is saying a similar kind of thing. Just go forward, that's all. Just go forward. If that seems the right way to go on your path, you take it. If it's the wrong way, you will find out very quickly. And you can say, oh, I made a mistake. Sorry. It's really simple. And then there's no karmic issues also in that. When we stay very clear and straightforward about our decisions, after much self-examination also. But he says, that later on in that paragraph, that we do as much as we can. If our attempt and if our intention and if our effort is not complete, he says, you can be saved at least partially. You would still have, I don't want to say saved here, you would still have partial insight into yourself because of the right of the practice you had done. And not everyone is seeking a fundamental liberation. And it's true. We have had so many people come through Zen practice. Thousands of people have actually come through Olympia Zen Center. And many people come just to find out what it is they wanted to find out. And then they go forward. And they are not necessarily intent on awakening. But there's something they need to learn and want to know about themselves. And so they do that and then they leave. And that is the nature of running a Zen center. People flow through. It's the water. It's like the stream of people in practice coming through. And we, haven't always been that open about just letting them come and go. Like, why are you leaving? But that is the nature of life also. We flow, we move along. And, some people simply want to supplement, as he says, the need to supplement something that is lacking in them. And so those needs can be fulfilled also.
On page 133, I really love.
Say again, Karen.
Page 133. I love
I can't understand you.
We can't hear.
How about now?
Yes, now it's good.
Okay. Page 33.
Now I can't understand you again.
I think I have to sit it out.
Okay. Well, when you talk back like that, we get you. I think it's when you turn your head for the book. Maybe if you put the book in front of you to read the page.
On page 133.
133.
The imagery of, because the Buddhist teachings have such a wide range, it can reach the very tips of the branches. And then he repeats that in the paragraph right before questioner. The way of liberation can be realized anywhere from the very top of the tree to the very tips of the branches.
Yes.
And I thought, because there is human variety, there is Dharma variety. Because there's Dharma variety, there's human variety. It just is such an allowance in that imagery.
Yes. Yes. I was talking with Allison today a little bit, something similar. And I was saying that, you know, we have the 1,000-armed Kuan Yin, the 1,000-armed Bodhisattva, who carries a tool for every situation, for every single person, something that they might need. And I said, but my notion of that is that those 1,000 arms are for every single person who needs those 1,000 pieces of help. So it isn't one for you and one for you and one for you. Therefore, those 1,000 arms are for each person. So we have all these possibilities that we can be supported in. And so indeed, that's like the tips of the trees and you know, the all-inclusiveness of something that the very first moment, the very first time we sit Zazen, we are already in the stream. So we are already touching that tree. We already are a branch.
I thought it was interesting how much in contrast that was to our earlier kind of problems with Dōgen Zenji and his interpretation that there was only one path, and if you weren't on the right path, you might as well not study at all. And then the interpretation here seems completely different.
I agree with you, Kirsten. I was very glad that we came to this page because I don't understand Dōgen's that particular thing, and I'm sorry that I didn't take the chance to look at other translations to see what other translations might say. So I will make a note of that, and I will do that for next time because I've got several translations of this Gakudō Yōjinshū, and I'll just see what is said in that. Because this is certainly open and inclusive and allowing for everyone at every level to be, to participate fully in practice and to participate fully in the realization of Buddha Dharma. At whatever level. I mean, we begin at whatever level we are. This is true of when we receive the precepts, we start with whatever we understand about the precepts at that point. So that is true. So I, for one, was glad to come to this page.
Before we leave the topic of loneliness, I'd like to briefly share a personal life experience without going into too much detail. Circumstances were such that I spent almost 11 months with my son's mom in a 12 by 18 foot cabin about 120 miles due west of Fairbanks. And we didn't see another soul that entire time. It was just the two of us. And after about 3 or 4 months of complete isolation, the loneliness became almost unbearable. It was such a heavy burden, just desperate for human contact. And I found the only way to liberate myself from that crushing, it was becoming a depression, was just to give it up, to just stop feeling sorry for myself, stop feeling lonely. And of course, the way I stopped feeling so lonely was to realize that I was connected with everything. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, a mystical experience, if you will. But I think it absolutely informed my my passion for Buddhism and the fundamental teachings. Notwithstanding, there was a 45 or 50 year hiatus there between sitting when I was much younger and sitting today. But that giving up of self, of feeling, oh, so sorry for myself, because it was a choice. I mean, we were out there by choice, although we didn't really plan on complete isolation for almost 11 months. It was just a remarkable experience. I hope that's relevant somehow. I don't know if it is. But.
It's extremely relevant right now for people who are enclosed because of COVID-19. And people who cannot go out anywhere and are almost entrapped at home and unable to see other people. I know several who are in this situation, and it's very, very hard. It's, we're going on almost a year now. March 15th is when we closed down. So we're just 6 weeks away from a year. That's astounding, but it's very hard on people. So, it's like if you really want to know yourself, go to the desert. You don't go up to the mountains, you go to the desert if you really, really want to know yourself, because there's nothing there to feed you in any way that that it's just there and you're stuck with yourself. And so it's that kind of starkness and the absence of other human life that is so stark. So it's that sort of thing that people are experiencing, where they are stuck on a kind of a home desert. So it's very hard times.
Yeah. And there is a close relationship between the frozen Arctic and the desert. And what ties them together in my mind is the stillness. When it is literally 40, 50 below, it's really, really quiet. I mean, you can hear a raven flying in from a quarter mile away. But if that raven isn't there, it is just totally quiet. And it provides such fertile ground for just for feeling that connection to everything, because there's just nothing between you and the rest of the world. There's no noise, no stimulation.
Right.
It can be very inspiring.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No doubt about it. But for people alone, couple of Sundays, I gave a Dharma talk for the Association of Soto Zen Buddhists, and it was live streamed on Facebook. But I was sitting here in the Zendo, and I could not see anybody on the screen. It was just me, and it was as though the screen was totally dead, and there was only me looking at myself speaking. And it was the most bizarre experience. So if you truly live alone and you don't hear other human voices and you start speaking, your own voice, comes back at you in a very bizarre kind of way that makes you think you are crazy. And so I really think that that we have to, like what we are doing here is really important for people who live alone. And just so that there's some idea of some contact, some people out there. But it's stark to be completely alone right now for people. So. But the desert, while the desert is stark and we find ourselves out there, the sky becomes the ocean that we cannot see otherwise. So, a great ocean above. So, yeah. So then on the top of 134, there's just this reiteration of, once again, about intelligence. This woman asks about, or the questioner asks about somebody who grabbed the hot tea. And Roshi had said, it isn't a matter of knowing that fire is hot. I mean, you pick up something that's hot and you don't need to know that it's what hot is. You'll dump it out of your hand very, very quickly. And so Roshi says, it isn't a matter of knowing it's hot, it's just hot. It is hot, it isn't knowing it, and so it isn't knowledge. So he's trying to jump us past, once again, this question of telling ourselves what the thing is and just immediately sensing something, so that we jump past any consideration or any judgment on it. It's not knowledge, it's just the thing is hot. We've all, every single person on the screen has had that experience. We've all picked up something that's hot. So you've already done it. It's done. Already.
I think it's such a great example because once it happens, I mean, it happens to me all the time because I bake a lot and I cook a lot. And I'll tell you, you just do not forget the sensation. And it's, boy, talk about just cutting through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Or even to hold an ice cube. You know, you don't have to know what cold is. You go out and there it is. And it reminds me, just as an aside, my brother was hiking in Scotland and going from a B&B to a B&B, and they moved his luggage forward. So he got very late to this Airbnb, and the Scottish woman opened the door to let him in. And he says, so can you tell me what the weather is going to be tomorrow? And she opens the door and she says, look, there's your weather. Thank you, Yuja. So that's it. You know, you don't have to do anything. You can just go out. Just go out.
As we're talking about this, I'm remembering there's a story, I think it was from the previous book we read, about a very earnest monk who spent years and years and years sitting zazen, and he just couldn't quite make it there. And he finally gave up in disgust and was walking back down the trail to his house, you know, and he tripped and he really hurt himself. And like, bam, at that moment, he was like, oh.
Right. It's that sort of thing. We always have to hope that a stone, a rock gets in the way, or, you know, or we come upon a peach blossom or something happens. Yeah, indeed. So it is like that. It's just, there it is. Yeah. So, what else, questions does anybody have? I just am going through my own highlights here. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm page 134. He's talking about, I thought it was interesting because he's a Zen master. And anyway, he says, there is a way of liberation within that period of transmigration. That is something we must do for the dead. He's talking about performing funerals.
Right.
And that there's this opportunity when you die to attain liberation. Anyway, what I thought was interesting about it was that Tibetan Buddhists talk about that a lot, but I don't often hear Zen Buddhists talk about that. And I wondered if you'd want to make a comment about that, why that might be, and also why Buddhist funerals are really important in Japan, but Buddhism in the West doesn't seem to emphasize that so much.
Right. Well, first of all, a funeral is an ordination, is a jukai. So it's a restatement of the precepts. And I mean, that's essentially what a funeral is in Soto Zen. So, you know, I do have to say that Zen does have its shamanic and esoteric side to it. And, you know, I also underlined this, Joan. This was my next place to go in the discussion. So it's it's a difficult one. And I think that Americans are less observant or concerned about this transmigration or let's say the presence of a spirit after one dies and the care of that spirit after one dies. But certainly the Japanese are quite concerned about that and about making sure that the spirits are restive and are not running around and lurking about the graveyard. So there is great care about the souls in the afterlife. And there is also the Confucian practice of caring for the ancestors on one's home altar and the honoring the ancestors, the your grandmother and grandfather and great grandfather, and every morning offering them fresh tea and rice. And the practice is that your care of them will cause them to be benevolent in your present life as you are here. It's a Confucian practice. And so, the Japanese culture consists of Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, and Shintoism. So there are all of these practices that merge and so forth. So I think you're going to get different responses to that kind of thing, depending upon where you are, at what temple you happen to be at. I feel personally that I am aware of the movement of spirits beyond what we, I believe that there is spirit. So a temple master or a temple head the job is to keep the spirits quiet. I mean, we also live on land that was a secret meeting place for Native Americans in time past. So when we first came, we had many, many spirits here, and not just me, Allison can attest to that we had quite a bit of phenomena going on here. We also, I'll just say phenomena. I could tell you actual stories, but because of that, we made offerings of tobacco to the native spirits who are here. And so that practice continues here, that every once in a while, we calm the spirits. I mean, I don't believe that there is afterlife or that we go to some heaven or hell. But I think there is residue of our life that leaves a mark. And I think that lives somehow and can be present for us. I know that many people experience their dead mother suddenly showing up in their bedroom at night, or, that sort of thing. So I personally believe there is that phenomenon. I can't explain it, but it is also the temple's job to care for that. And so we honor the life of a person by offering an appropriate funeral and the transmission of the precepts for the betterment of all life. And not that soul is going to come again in that same soul person. I don't believe that for a minute, but just the future life is made better for everyone by that care of the deceased. So I don't know if that explains it enough for you, but that's where I am. And I think that we all have to come to terms with that ourselves. And I know that almost every Zen teacher has a different take on it. And that's how it will be. So
Eido-san?
Yeah.
I have a question. That same paragraph, it says, through the cause and effect relationship, there is transmigration through the realm of birth and death. And I'm trying to place the transmigration. Is that what we're doing right now? We are transmigrating between birth and death.
Yeah, it's that simple. I don't take it some soul making a journey that, you know, is going to hang around up there somewhere and then appear in somebody else's body or in another body. I personally do not believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in an eternal soul, but I do believe like a candle, you know. So this is the light of your body right here, this candle. And that light then is transmitted to something else, to the next light. And that candle, it keeps going forward in that sense. That our appearance is the lighting of a candle that lights another candle.
Mm-hmm.
So, so, you know, there is the transmigration of the movement from birth and to death. And so we are, I would agree, we're in the midst of that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but again, I do not, I don't believe in reincarnation in the sense that I will show up. This consciousness is going to show up somewhere else in a new body. I just don't believe it.
Well, a follow-up question. When you mentioned a residue, something, are we talking about karma?
Well, we could be. We certainly could be. I mean, that is what he speaks about later, in that if we engage in karmic activity, then, you know, we're leaving a stream.
There's a residue that...
Right. Right. There's, you know, a residue just of your having been here because people love you. And so, you know, that is extended then into the world. That love reaches into the world and people resonate with that. So it's that kind of residue that I mean. That.
Ah, okay.
I mean, how long did we go on talking about June? I'm still talking. I still miss June.
Yeah.
She still shows up. She still shows up.
Uh-huh. Yes. Okay.
It's like walking into a room and knowing that someone else has been there. They're not there. You can't see them, but it's kind of a felt, maybe intuitive. It's a felt presence.
Sure. Yeah. And so, you know, if we become attuned to that kind of awareness, then, you know, we simply become awake to it, and we realize that is there. It's okay if you don't have that kind of attunement, but some people do have it, that are keenly aware of their surroundings and what is going on around them, and so are just more open to that kind of experience. But what I find very, very, very difficult is when somebody dies and has left an order that there should be absolutely no ceremony around their life. I very, very much struggle with that. I am pained by that. And so it is an honor to grieve for people. Grief is an honor that we pay to the, you know, the importance of that life that has gone before us. And then the act of ceremony is that outward grieving that is necessary for all of us. And I think for the transmigration of that spirit moving forward. So.
I think that's something that's been really, really hard about these COVID times. I can't even count how many people's memorial services have been postponed and are still postponed.
Yes.
And some people haven't even had funerals.
Right.
We've lost so many people. I mean, my best friend of 35 years back in July in another state, no memorial service yet. I mean, her kids had to deal with that. It was really a shock. And it's just one person after another. And it's like everything's on hold. It's like, it's really hard. I mean, how does that affect everybody?
We don't,
Probably to me, that's one of the hardest things about this.
yeah, Cynthia, we don't know the ramifications, the psychological ramifications of postponed grief. I think that we're in for quite difficult times. And we're liable to be in this for another year. You know, we're certainly getting forecasts now of another wave of the pandemic coming with a variant. And if that happens, you know, we may be another year. So we need to prepare and to find community and, you know, show up in community and really do not allow ourselves to become isolated, because we do at least have this form of gathering that is very important. So, but I don't know the psychological ramifications of postponed grief, except that it's mounted in us, and maybe we become speechless ultimately. I don't know what happens in it.
Yeah, I think personally we can go through our own grief over the loss of that person, but there's something about actually gathering together and putting someone to rest that is not happening.
Right. That's
Well,
right.
one of the aspects of, you know, bereavement work when we can't hold ceremonies is that you miss, for example, telling stories about your best friend that her kids hear or that other people hear. And it's this crafting of meaning around people's lives, a shared crafting of meaning that we are foregoing. And so, you know, that if this went on long enough, we would lose that element. We could potentially, like, imagine this goes on for decades, right?
Yeah.
We could potentially lose that aspect of how we understand working with death. Or, and so I think in the bereavement field, one of the concerns is that there's complicated grief. So each additional loss that you experience gets magnified by the fact that you didn't actually get to process the grief around loss A or loss B or loss C. And each subsequent loss is even harder to cope with. And it sort of builds up and builds up.
Yeah.
And if it had been any other time, if it hadn't been during all of this stay-at-home stuff, I would have literally jumped on a plane. We would have all gone out there and been there, you know. But that's just not happening now. It's like, oh, we've got to wait, and then we can go out together. And then I think I did kind of go crazy with sharing all the stories about my best friend online with her entire Facebook group and her, she had kind of a recovery Dharma group that she belonged to and everything. And I just kind of went crazy. I felt like I was, you know, bogarting the whole page with all the stories I would post about her, because I always have this feeling I cannot let these people be forgotten, and I have to tell all the stories. So I did what I could. I still think we should start having like Zoom memorial services, and I'm sure there are people who do it, but I kind of felt like I was butting in a lot when she's got her kids and everything. But I think it would be good to just do more of that. Just go ahead and do it, because people need to talk and get to.
Right. Yeah, many people do a Zoom funeral. So, but the thing that happens, as Karen was saying, that I mean, I've been to funerals where the family didn't know the public life of their own family member, and all these people show up, and they had no idea that their husband knew all of these people at work, or their daughter knew all of these people. So that's what doesn't happen, of course, in this situation too. So the other element is knowing your family member through those who grieve is lost. So, I don't know how we came to this, but we did come to this. And I think it's time to slow down in this too, but I think we might have about 6 more pages to go in this chapter, and I think we could stay with it. I think it's got a good bit of content in the questions and answers area. And I know you're going to be writing down your questions for Kondo Roshi, so please do think about that. And I think that we will stick for that for the next time, from page 135 to 142. And we can always go backwards too in the book if there are questions that relate backwards. So beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassed, I vow to become it. Thank you very much, everyone. It's just so wonderful to see you and to hear the Dharma that you express in this shared Dharma expression. Thank you very much. See you next week or on the mornings for Zazen. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you. Good night.
Bye.
Take care.
Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.